Afternoon, fifth graders. I am here to read the story New Beginnings for you today. We're going to go over the questions first so that we can set the purpose for our reading. We are looking first at using each of these sentences in words in a sentence. So we're looking at treaty, historic, benefit, civilization, and profitable. So as we're reading, I want you to be thinking about those 5 words. A lot of times when I'm reading and I find those words and I figure out what they mean, I'll pause what I'm doing and go back and write those sentences as I'm listening to the story. So that's one way that you can try and do that today. Our second question is write 2 paragraphs using text evidence from Beyond the Horizon, Explorers of North America and New Beginnings, Jamestown and the Virginia colonies to support or disprove the following statements. The rewards of exploration outweigh the risks. Write your response below or on a separate sheet of paper. So the only thing that I want you to think about right here is we have not read The Explorers of North America, so you can cancel that one out. We have not read that one. And so looking at just Beyond the Horizon and New Beginnings, the one we're reading today, and looking at the statement, the rewards of exploration outweigh the risk. So do the things that they find or the knowledge that they gain or any kind of rewards that they get from doing exploration outweigh the risks or the problems that might occur? And so that's kind of an opinion, but you need to have evidence from both Beyond the Horizon and Jamestown and New Beginnings. So when you're doing those, when you're looking for evidence from Beyond the Horizon, go back to the modules in Canvas that have that story in there, and that can help you. All right, and let's get ready to read. Okay, so New Beginnings, Jamestown and the Virginia colony, 1607 to 1699. Okay. So it says these houses in the Colonial National Historical Park at Jamestown have been made to look like the original ones. April 26th, we first saw the coast of Virginia. We entered Chesapeake Bay and landed, discovering fair meadows and goodly tall trees with such fresh waters running through the woods. I was stunned at the sight. George Percy, Jamestown colonist. Introduction. Homes and families to risk an ocean. Oh, sorry, it's kind of messed up here. Why would people leave their homes and families to risk an ocean journey of more than 3,000 miles? Why would they give up the comforts of settled life for the unknown dangers of a new land? I'm already starting to think about those risks versus rewards. England in the late 1500s was not a pleasant place for most people. Many people were out of work. Many had lost their homes. Some saw a chance for a better life in America. They hoped to ship furs, fish, and timber back to England to make their fortunes. Others believed that they would find gold and silver in America. Still, others wanted to farm. I'm seeing a list of some of the possible things that would outweigh the risks. Let's see if that's those that come to fruition later on. People like these were among the first small groups of English settlers who sailed to the new land. They arrived in what is now the state of Virginia. The Virginia colony became the first permanent English settlement in America. In the earliest years of the Virginia colony, the Virginians made some decisions that would shape the history of America. The earliest English settlers were taking the first steps on the road to building the modern United States. Many brave people followed them. This is their story. Starting Jamestown, Virginia's story began with a disaster. In 1587, English colonists settled on an island called Roanoke. The island is off the coast of present-day North Carolina. The Roanoke colony did not last. When leaders returned with supplies from England in 1590, everyone had disappeared. The fate of the lost colony, as it was called, is still a mystery. The disaster stopped the English from returning to Virginia for a short time. After a while, the idea of riches won out over fear of what might happen. In 1606, a group of London businessmen decided they could get rich in North America. They formed a company called the Virginia Company. They asked King James I of England for a charter or a permit to start a colony in Virginia. The charter stated the rights, duties, and goals of the company. The king thought a colony would benefit England. He granted the charter. Granted means he allowed it. 3 ships left London for Virginia in December 1606. The ships carried about 100 colonists and all the things that they would need. Who were these brave people? They were all men. Some of them were farmers. Others were servants. A few were skilled craftsmen. Many of them were gentlemen. At that time in England, a gentleman did not do physical labor. These men did not expect to do any work in the Virginia colony either. English gentlemen were not preferred for the work of building a colony. Arrival in Virginia. The English had learned something from earlier failures, but they hadn't learned enough. They sent people to the new land who had no skills or desire to work. They were not planning to clear forests or plant crops. They believed their only work would be bending over to pick up all the gold and silver on the ground. They were going to the Virginia colony to strike it rich. Crossing the Atlantic had left most of the travelers seasick and weak. So I'm already noticing some problems that they might have faced, the being seasick and weak. But one of the benefits that they were seeking out was becoming rich through finding gold and silver. Crossing the Atlantic had left most. They wondered if they had made the right choice. Then on April 26, 1607, they first saw the coast of Virginia. The beauty of the land stunned them. Flowers were in bloom, dense forests and wild game covered the land. The settlers saw Virginia as a land of opportunity. For the next few weeks, the colonists explored the coast. They sailed up a river they named the James. On May 14th, they chose a place for their settlement. They called it Jamestown. Both the river and the town were named in honor of England's king, James I. These are copies of 2 of the 3 Jamestown ships, the Susan Constant left and the Godspeed right. The colonists and the Native Americans. The Native Americans who lived in the area were the Powhatan. They were tall, dignified people. They farmed, fished, and hunted. They had a powerful chief, also called Powhatan. He led some 9,000 people. The Powhatan men were warriors. They thought of war as a kind of deadly sport. Men went to war to show their courage. Raids on enemy villages were common. So the settlers' first task was to build a log fort. Watercolor painting of a Powhatan warrior with spear. Relations between the Indians and the settlers were always uneasy. To the Powhatan, the colonists were invaders. The English thought that they were bringing civilization to the Indians. They believed that the English way of life was the best way. Yet the settlers needed Powhatan help. They traded with the Indians for food. The Powhatan were glad to trade for metal tools and guns. They didn't know how to make such things, but they had little food to trade. They only grew enough food to last into the early spring. The settlers' demands put the tribe at risk. If they gave the settlers too much food, they themselves could starve. The difference between the Indians and the colonists would cause troubles between the two groups. Voices from America. In our great need, the Indians brought us corn when we rather expected they would destroy us. John Smith, leader of the Virginia colony. The first months. Soon problems developed. The place the colonists chose for their settlement proved to be a mistake. They had chosen land that stuck out into the river. They thought this made good sense. The deep water let the colonists tie their ships up close to land, but the land was marshy. The soil was poor. Salt water backed up from the ocean and got into the drinking water. Mosquitoes thrived in the marshy land. The mosquitoes spread malaria. The disease killed many settlers. Many colonists became ill from drinking the bad water. The few crops the men had planted were not yet ripe. They were low on supplies. The settlers grew weak from lack of food. They were often unable to hunt or fish because of the danger of attack by the Native Americans. Life in Jamestown did not get off to a good start. These early months were hard. Settlers gathering logs to build a fence around the fort. A leader saves the colony, Captain John Smith, and then we have a picture at the bottom of a Powhatan village. All through the first summer, people died. By September, more than half of the settlers were dead. The leaders argued amongst themselves. No one could decide what to do. Would Jamestown suffer the same fate as the lost colony? The settlers needed a leader, or they would all die. At last, one man took charge. His name was Captain John Smith. Smith was 27 years old when he arrived to Jamestown. As a soldier, he already had lived through enough adventures for a man twice his age. He knew how to survive in the wilderness. He knew that the settlers had to work and farm, not search for gold. Smith gave orders for each man to work on building the fort and gathering food. When the gentlemen reminded Smith of their rank, Smith had a simple answer: "He who will not work will not eat." The gentlemen went to work. Smith helped the settlers survive.